The 1990s gave us the highest score we have ever recorded for a number one pick. 176 points of career value. A quarterback who didn't just redefine his position, he redefined the standard. But the same decade also gave us a AV of 11 and a 13. Number one picks who barely made it off the starting line. The 90s were the decade of extremes. The greatest single pick in this entire series and some of the most heartbreaking misses. And in between, hidden in plain sight, were names that changed the NFL forever. Let's go find them. 1990. Indianapolis is desperate for a savior. They trade everything to secure the first overall pick. Their choice, Jeff George, the hometown hero with $1 million arm. The size, the talent, the swagger. 66, 12 seasons, 7 different teams. A flame that never quite became a wildfire. But while Indianapolis was searching for a savior, Dallas was quietly finding a dynasty at pick 17. Emmitt Smith, the engine of the Cowboys dynasty, the NFL's all-time leading rusher, AV 129. In most years, that's the end of the story. But 1990 had one more name, 5 picks earlier, waiting in San Diego. Pick 5, the Chargers take Junior Seau. He didn't just play linebacker, he was the soul of a decade. Or even more, 20 seasons of relentless football, still playing at elite level into his late 30s. 129 versus 133. The slimmest of margins. But the search is final. Emmitt was the king of the highlights. Seau was the king of the numbers. In 1990, the real gem wasn't at the top and wasn't even the most famous name in the class. He was at pick 5 in a city that never quite appreciated what it had. 1991, Dallas is on the clock. Fresh off a rebuild, they look to the trenches, selecting Russell Maryland, a defensive tackle from the University of Miami. Solid, dependable, 3 Super Bowl rings as part of a dynasty. 60, a respectable career for a high-stakes pick. But 1991 had a catastrophic surprise waiting just outside the first round. A player so overlooked he hasn't even the first, second, or third quarterback taken. Pick 33, round 2. Atlanta selects a kid from Southern Miss named Brett Favre. He wouldn't finish his first season before being traded to Green Bay, where he lit the league on fire for the next 15 years. 60 versus 158, a gap of nearly 100 points. Maryland was a piece of the puzzle. Favre was the entire picture. In Atlanta, he threw 4 passes, 2 interceptions, 0 completions, before being traded away. That trade is now considered one of the greatest mistakes in franchise history, because the name they gave up didn't just rewrite records, he became the standard for durability. 1992, Indianapolis holds the first overall pick. They take Steve Emtman, a defensive end from Washington so dominant he was called a once-in-a-generation lock. the man they plan to build the entire franchise around. 13. One of the most heartbreaking numbers in this entire series. 3 consecutive season-ending injuries. Just 18 games for the team that drafted him. This isn't a failure of scouting. It's a story of a career the sport simply never got to see. And while Indianapolis watched their investment unravel, Dallas was quietly selecting a receiver in round 2 who would spend years fighting just to survive, before becoming one of the best of his generation. Pick 36, Dallas drafts Jimmy Smith out of Jackson State. He barely plays in Dallas. Then a near-fatal illness nearly ends everything before it starts. He finds his way to Jacksonville in 1995. It doesn't stop for the next 9 seasons. 13 versus 94. One story defined by injury, the other defined by resilience. Both found in the same draft, one opposite ends of everything the NFL can be. 1993. New England is a franchise without an identity. They take Drew Bledsoe, the prototypical franchise quarterback. Rocket arm, veteran poise. He single-handedly brought the Patriots back to relevance. 105. An elite return for a number 1 pick, one of the best we've seen. Bledsoe gave New England a decade of high-level play and a real shot at a championship. But while he was lighting up scoreboards in Foxborough, the New York Giants were finding something different at pick 40. A defensive end from Texas Southern that nobody outside New York would talk about, until they couldn't stop talking about him. Pick 40. The Giants take Michael Strahan. No early hype, just a motor that never stopped. 15 seasons, the single-season sack record, a Super Bowl ring, and eventually one of the most recognizable faces on American television. 105 versus 122. Bledsoe was the savior New England needed. Strahan was the game changer the entire league feared. Long before the morning shows, he was the most dangerous man on the field, found in round 2. 1994. Cincinnati looks to dominate the trenches. They take Dan Big Daddy Wilkinson, a massive defensive tackle from Ohio State. A physical specimen, a mountain of a man expected to crush interior lines for years. 60. A long career, but the nickname promised more than the numbers delivered. And just 1 pick later, Indianapolis was making a choice that would redefine the running back position. Pick 2. The Colts take Marshall Faulk. Not just a runner, a pioneer. The prototype of the modern dual threat back. Whether in Indianapolis or as the centerpiece of the greatest show on turf in St. Louis, Faulk was a statistical anomaly. One of the few players in history to record 1,000 rushing and 1,000 receiving yards in the same season. 60 versus 132. Cincinnati got a starter. Indianapolis found a Hall of Fame engine. 1 pick apart. Sometimes the search doesn't have to go very far. The answer is right there at pick 2. 1995. Cincinnati trades up to the number 1 spot for Ki-Jana Carter, a running back from Penn State so gifted that scouts ran out of superlatives. The final piece of the puzzle, a blend of speed and power that made the entire league take notice. 11. His third carry, a preseason game, before the regular season had even started. One moment, and everything the draft had promised was gone. Ki-Jana Carter is not a failure. He's a reminder of how fragile greatness can be. And while Cincinnati mourned their lost investment, Tampa Bay was quietly building something extraordinary at the bottom of the first round. At pick 12, defensive tackle Warren Sapp, future Hall of Famer. And at pick 28, a linebacker who would become the heartbeat of an entire franchise. Derrick Brooks. Not the biggest linebacker, not the loudest, just a clinical assassin. 14 seasons of perfection as the cornerstone of the legendary Tampa 2 defense. He led the Buccaneers to their first Super Bowl title and earned a gold jacket in the process. 11 versus 142, the largest value gap in this entire series. And Tampa didn't just find one Hall of Famer that day. They found two, 16 picks apart. In 1995, the chosen one never made it to the week one. The real gem was waiting at pick 28, and he dominated for the next 14 years. 1996. New York wants a spark, a personality to lead the franchise back to glory. They take Keyshawn Johnson, a physical wide receiver from USC who famously titled his own autobiography, "Just Give Me the Damn Ball." 3 Pro Bowls, a Super Bowl ring, a real star. 79, a solid return. But 1996 was overflowing with elite talent. Marvin Harrison at pick 19, 123. Terrell Owens at pick 89, 121. Zach Thomas in the 5th round, 115. In any other era, any one of them walks away as undisputed gem of the class. But 1996 had one more name. Found at pick 26 in the first ever draft of a relocated franchise. The Baltimore Ravens' very first pick as a franchise. Ray Lewis. He didn't just play linebacker. He became the identity of an entire organization. The commander-in-chief of a defense many consider the greatest in NFL history. 79 versus 160. Keyshawn wanted the ball. Lewis wanted the soul of the opposing offense. In a year where 3 other Hall of Famers crossed 115 points, Ray Lewis stands alone. The most feared force in football history, found at pick 26 in a franchise's very first moment. 1997. St. Louis wants a fortress. They take Orlando Pace, the legendary tackle from Ohio State. He didn't just meet the hype, he defined it. The man who kept the greatest show on turf upright, protecting the blind side with grace and power rarely seen in any human that size. 104. One of those rare years where the number 1 pick was genuinely the right call. But even in a draft where the top choice was a home run, our search kept going. All the way to round 3, pick 73, Miami, a defensive end from Akron that the critics said was too lean for the trenches. Jason Taylor used that lean frame like a knife. 15 seasons of surgical pass rushing, 1 Defensive Player of the Year, a Hall of Fame career from pick 73. 104 versus 118. The bodyguard at pick 1, the surgeon at pick 73. Even when the scouts nailed the top pick, the search always finds something more. 1998. Indianapolis holds the first overall pick, the choice that will define their franchise for 2 decades, Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf. But this isn't just a draft decision, it's a birthright. Peyton is the son of Archie Manning, the New Orleans legend taken 2nd overall in 1971. He was raised for this moment. 176, the highest score ever recorded for a number 1 overall pick in this entire series. Manning didn't just live up to his father's legacy, he surpassed it. He became the gold standard for quarterback play and the most decorated signal caller in NFL history. But our search never stops, even for perfection, because at pick 21, Minnesota found a receiver that 20 teams passed on, partially out of fear of his attitude. A receiver who spent the next decade proving everyone wrong. Pick 21, Randy Moss. As a rookie, 17 touchdowns and a 15-1 record. A statement so loud you could hear it from every front office that passed. 176 versus 124. Manning wins decisively. 1998 is the year the search finally found its answer at the very top of the board. Sometimes the chosen one is exactly who they say he is. 1999, a historic year. The Cleveland Browns returned to the NFL. With the first overall pick, they needed a face for the resurrection. They take Tim Couch, the prolific quarterback from Kentucky, the man chosen to carry the weight of an entire city's football identity. 30. Couch wasn't broken by his own limitations. He was broken by an offensive line that couldn't protect him. 166 sacks in 5 seasons. The system failed him before he could fail the system. And just below the surface, the rest of the top 10 was stacked with franchise cornerstones. Pick 2, Donovan McNabb in Philadelphia, AV 107, a decade of NFC dominance. Pick 4, Edgerrin James in Indianapolis, 113, the engine of a high-powered dynasty. Both Hall of Famers. Both proof that the real value was across the entire top 10. But the highest number in the class was found at pick 7. Washington takes Champ Bailey, the ultimate lockdown corner. Whether in Washington or Denver, Bailey played with a level of technical perfection that few have ever matched. He didn't just cover receivers, he erased them from the game plan entirely. 30 versus 117. The millennium closes the way the decade opened, with the number 1 pick buried under the weight of impossible expectations. and the real gems scatter across the board for those willing to look past the obvious. 10 drafts, 10 searches. And the 90s gave us the full range of what the draft can be. The highest score ever recorded at number 1, Manning at 176. The lowest score ever recorded at number 1, Ki-Jana Carter at 11. A second-round quarterback traded away after 4 incomplete passes, who became one of the greatest of all time. And a franchise's very first pick, who became the most feared defender in football history. The draft doesn't follow a script, and the 90s proved it more than any decade before. The 2000s bring a new era, salary caps, free agency, and a quarterback arms race that changes everything. The gems don't get easier to find. They get more expensive to miss. I'm Victor Francisco for the Global Sideline. The search continues on the next video.